Thank you, everyone. It is 4:30, so I will call our special council meeting to order and acknowledge that we are operating today within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, and acknowledge and respect that fact. And just make sure everybody understands that we are also recording today's Zoom council meeting, and this will be posted on the district's YouTube channel. So with that, could we please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried. And I am now noting that I have pulled up the wrong page on my computer, so I am going to fix that right now. Sorry about this. And I don't think we have any public comment in the Q&A, so we will just move on. And we're going to start off with a letter from the Ucluelet Secondary School, or an email rather, from the Ucluelet Secondary School requesting support for the Grad Banners and parade. So you will have seen that in your package there, and it is an estimated $2,000 for the cost of a banner for each grad to have their name and face, and they will be able to keep them as a memento. There is a parade that's being organized for the grads, as well as a video that's going to be done up for the grads. And the District of Ucluelet is putting in $1,000, and we are being requested to also put in $1,000. So before maybe we even get to comment, I just want to look to staff and say, if council wants to do this, where does it come out of, so we can craft the appropriate motion?
Your worship would need to come from this year's contingency.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so comments from members of council? Councillor Steer?
Yeah, I of course would like to support this initiative for a variety of reasons. It's been a very unique year for the graduates as well as the whole school system. It is a nice gesture. The cost, they did a lot of work on getting the costs down, and also from the Tofino, sort of the Tofino, but the Parent Advisory Committee has also put forward some of the funding towards some banners that'll be down here on the Tofino end of the peninsula from Tla-o-qui-aht down. So I would support this, and I think it's a very nice gesture at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I'm in support as well.
Anybody else? Okay, how about a motion then that council approves the $1,000 request from the Ucluelet Secondary School for the Grad Banner program to be funded from contingency?
I'll move that exactly as you worded it.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll second it.
And that is seconded by Councillor McMaster. All in favor? Thank you, that's everybody, and the motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so April, over to you, and thank you so much for this thorough report around the idea of alfresco dining, and we are looking forward to hearing more, so thank you.
And thank you, Mayor and Council.
Wait, I forgot about this.
That's okay, I can actually stay for this one. I didn't realize that we were in alfresco dining. I apologize.
Okay, we are in alfresco dining. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Council is aware, provincial requirements regarding social distancing and WorkSafe BC requirements have reduced the amount of space available to businesses to serve their customers, including cafes and restaurants. Many communities are exploring the expansion of outdoor dining as a possible solution to this dilemma, with some closing roads, parking, and other public spaces as a means to provide opportunities for socially distanced dining. We know that dining is a big part of Tofino's draw as a destination and forms a big part of the visitor experience while they're here. And it is a real concern that an undersupply of seating is likely to result in a negative experience for visitors. The district's become aware, both through the Mayor's Economic Task Force and the Tofino Long Beach Chamber of Commerce's sector-specific roundtables that COVID-related food service requirements are a very real risk to the viability of that sector. Staff has started to explore the viability of pop-up, one or more pop-up al fresco dining areas in public spaces, and diners would be able to carry their takeout food to these spaces. This would be beyond privately created or operated restaurant patios and would offer visitors a fresh air option that they may be more comfortable with. These areas would remain public, just like a park. They'd be unaffiliated with any private business and would ultimately, a user would be just as welcome to go and sit there with their homemade lunch or their sandwich from the co-op as they would with a meal purchased from a local restaurant. The district already offers some public seating, be it picnic benches on the village green or benches on sidewalks downtown. So this is not inconsistent with the types of services that local government already provides. Staff is proposing that the paved parking lot adjacent to the Municipal Hall, so the RV parking lot, be repurposed, reimagined for the 2020 season as an al fresco dining area. And envisioned site furnishings would include picnic tables, tents, temporary planters, that sort of thing. We do want to make it a pleasant experience, something where people want to go sit down and not that they're relegated to a parking lot as sort of a consolation table. The tables are not proposed to be licensed, at least not initially, for the consumption of alcohol, though the restaurant sector has expressed an interest in exploring the feasibility of licensed areas in the future, and we know that this is something that is being considered in other jurisdictions. If demand warrants, additional locations may be considered. Locations that we've looked at include the Village Green, obviously just a small portion of that space, and the parklet or parking area at the corner of Neil and 2nd Street. The concept of an al fresco pop-up dining area was well supported when presented by district staff at a May 25th restaurant sector roundtable hosted by the Tofino Long Beach Chamber of Commerce. And with many seasonal festivals and events canceled, the pop-up park is also an opportunity to engage artists to enrich the visitor experience through temporary displays, occasional live music. It is important to highlight for Council that this project is still under development. It has a few moving parts and does have some uncertainties and risks. As Council is aware, the district is currently working with a reduced number of staff, and all efforts will need to be made to minimize any additional demands on regular district operations, but it's unrealistic to think that there won't be some impact. If the project is to proceed, the district would need to engage community partners and contractors to see the project be successful, and staff would carefully monitor the pop-up park to modify its operations as needed to ensure it continued to operate as safely and in a positive manner. It's proposed to run from mid-June, maybe now late June, to mid-September, and expenses related to the project to be funded by the Tofino's participation in the Resort Municipality Initiative or RMI Fund. And while it is not a project that is currently part of the resort development strategy, it is consistent with the objectives of the program, and staff has discussed it with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, who's been very, very supportive of the proposal. That's my proposal, and I welcome any questions from Council.
Thank you very much, April. Anybody have a question? Yes, Councillor Chalmers.
April, thank you for that, and I'm very much in support of the project. I think is a great idea. I have a couple. I understand that you said that there's a lot of moving parts still, and you're still working things out, so you may not have the answer to these. But as far as will it be fully our staff responsible for keeping it clean throughout the day? Will the restaurants have any input in that? And then the other question would be sort of security overnight, how that would look.
Yeah, so those are both really good questions, and questions we've been spending quite a bit of time on. We need to minimize, I think, any involvement, if possible, from regular district staff. They're fully committed right now to keeping the other wheels turning, if you will. So we would be looking to contract services for cleaning. Again, it's a sort of a passive space, so very much like the picnic tables on the village green, people are welcome to go and sit there. It's not going to be wiped down after every diner, but of course some level of cleaning and upkeep, would need to take place, and so we're looking at how we can best do that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Anderson, and then we'll go to Councillor Steer.
Yeah, my question around alcohol consumption has sort of partially been answered. I think it'll be really hard to prevent some alcohol consumption during sort of a dining experience. That might develop into, hopefully not, but might develop into a problem. And I'm wondering if around the question of sanitization, if we can provide a hand sanitizer station or maybe some sprays that people could access to clean their own tables in between, and of course garbage and clean up afterwards as well. So I'm also interested to know, and if we have any understanding, apparently UV rays destroy the virus, and so I imagine sunshine might take care of some of that sterilization need. So those are my comments and questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al. We certainly are, sorry, Councillor Anderson. Sanitation and the ability for folks to hand sanitize, hand washing stations, on-site, dispensers with Clorox wipes, those types of measures are all things that we're looking at.
Thanks. Councillor Steer.
Great. Thank you, April. I appreciate the report, and it sounds like a fun idea for the district. I had a couple of questions that have partially been answered. The first one is in your report there was that the restaurant sector were interested in exploring the feasibility of licensed areas in the future. And I'm curious as to what those future areas would look like. Is that on district property, or I was a little confused by that. And in the second part of that question, in terms of eligible expenses that will be covered by the RMI, does that include your staff planning time as well as the monitoring and other aspects of your proposal? Thank you.
So two questions, one regarding licensed areas. We know that licensed areas are something that is being explored in other jurisdictions. I'm sure you've seen in the news, Vancouver Parks Board, it's something that's being looked at in light of the situation we all find ourselves in an effort to get this report in front of council as quickly as possible. Staff has not had time to thoroughly explore liquor licensing and what that would look like, but it was something that the restaurant sector was certainly interested in hearing more about or learning more about, and I think we'll see how that plays out in other jurisdictions in the near future. Regarding operations, yes, the operation of the park would be supported as an eligible expense under RMI, and that will include some oversight. I don't plan to coordinate this entire endeavor. We hope to find someone that is much better at coordinating events to take that on, and their time, yes, would be an eligible expense.
Thanks. That answers your question, Tom?
Yeah, it does. I just, my video has somehow disappeared.
I totally understand. I was on a meeting earlier today and my sound disappeared. April can empathize with that. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions about this proposal? Yeah, Councillor Anderson, another comment?
Yeah, I'm very much in support of this, and are we going out to get some good solid picnic tables, or what exactly is it going to look like? And I'll give you two questions at once. The other one, are we anticipating the market to run on Saturdays in the Village Green? Because I could see if that's not running, maybe we could put more picnic tables on the green. So
Thanks.
some questions and comments, I guess, all bundled up. That's all.
Yes, we've started to look into picnic tables and found someone actually locally that can make us some really great solid picnic tables in very short period of time. So we have some good leads on that. Of course, it'd be ideal if we end up with something that can be repurposed afterwards. If we want to redeploy them at another park location, we want something that's going to be solid and in good condition for us at the end of the time that they're in the parking lot. The market, I know, is looking at what they can do this summer, so I don't have an answer for you on that today. I know as recently as Thursday or Friday, the regulations regarding markets changed, the provincial health order, so it's beyond just food now. Artisan wares can be sold as well, but I think there's a number of measures that need to be put in place. So I think they're looking into what can happen.
Great, thanks for the question. Anything else? Okay, I'll turn your attention to the draft recommendation in your package.
I'll move that the District of Tofino pursue the development of one or more temporary pop-up parks that would provide opportunities for alfresco dining as detailed in the staff report titled 2020 Alfresco Dining Pop-up Park dated June 1st, 2020, and that expenses related to the project be funded by Resort Municipality Initiative funds.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So moved and seconded. Oh, one quick question, April. What is the soonest this could get going?
We had been working towards a June 15th start. That
Right.
was when things were looking like we may be reopening a little bit sooner. So I would say second to third week of June is realistic.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, any other final comment or question? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. That's everybody. Motion carried. Thank you. I think this is, I just really want to say thank you to all the businesses that were part of instigating this idea and the responsiveness of the district and the task force members. And I was speaking to a couple of other colleagues of mine, mayors in other towns in Vancouver Island, and describing this idea. And a few other towns are doing this kind of a thing too. But we are different in that we are extremely fortunate to have Resort Municipality Initiative funding, and they're all trying to figure out kind of how to help fund it and support it. So I think we're in a really fortunate position, and I feel grateful for that. So thank you, April. Thanks very much. Okay, so over to Aaron now, and talking about the zoning amendment bylaw to help businesses in some similar and different ways. Thanks.
And just before
And
you
this is where
this is the one where I have to declare a conflict of interest, as I have shared interest in a business that would benefit from this particular move. So
thank you, and we'll see you after. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, if I may. Great. I'm assuming everybody can see the PowerPoint.
You can.
Great. Thank you. So, good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and I'm here to present a zoning amendment in support of economic recovery because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll be moving from the discussion on public land to discussion about private land. There's 3 recommendations in the report. The first would be to provide first and second reading to a zoning amendment. The second recommendation is that the District of Tofino public hearing requirements for a zoning bylaw be waived. And the third is that we would publish notices advising public of the waiver of public hearing. So those are the 3 recommendations in front of council this afternoon. Again, the purpose of this is to support community economic recovery through the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically to action an item in our COVID recovery action plan, whereas we would be able to provide support to local businesses through land use tools, and in this case, specifically zoning. So I think my colleague April Vermont explained it well, but we were going to see most likely fewer visitors to Tofino summer and fairly strict social distancing requirements. In support of our businesses, we're hoping to expand areas where they can provide their services while maintaining existing occupancies in terms of specifically with restaurants. The general idea is to expand uses, specifically patios and places where you can sell items into parking areas and setbacks. This would involve no applications and no fees for community members and businesses. It would be temporary in that the proposed amendment has a sunset clause of the end of December 2020. We have also been speaking with various stakeholders, the restaurant groups at the Chamber of Commerce, and there is a fair amount of support for this amendment. We've also had our lawyers provide a legal review, and they are happy with the approach that we're taking, and specifically the sunset clause. In terms of waiving the public hearing, the amendment is aligned with the OCP, so we can action that item if we wish. If we do so, the hearing would go into the newspapers for the 3rd and 10th of June, meaning we could adopt the bylaw on the 15th or 16th or 17th of June. Other areas such as loading areas or accessible parking spaces or egress and life safety requirements would still apply. So we would not expect a business to block a fire exit or put a patio into a space reserved for accessible users. The report also touches briefly on signage, on-street parking spaces, and parking time limits and takeout. These are all authorities to issue these types of agreements and provisions that are granted to the CAO of the district. And so there is provision in the signage bylaw to apply for signage of a temporary nature. There's provisions to enter into licensed occupation agreements in terms of on-street parking spaces for business use, and provisions to change parking time limits. The alfresco dining, April just introduced, and we expect there's also going to be a liquor licensing component for the private lands that will be presented by Chief Brent Baker next meeting on June 9th, based on the new regulations coming out of the province. And that's it for the presentation. I'd love to take any questions, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Aaron. Questions, anyone? Councillor Steer.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate the report, and I'm in full support. It's just more a quick comment about I'm still having problems with the waiving of public hearings, and I'm looking forward to the resumption of regular council meetings and the due processes that allows with the public hearing component. And I look forward to maybe from staff when potentially the resumption of regular council meetings will be taking place. And I know it's an ongoing discussion. I'll leave it at that, but that is my only uncomfortable aspect of this whole, and I look forward to that opportunity for some of our local businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Steer. I think we'll have an opportunity to talk about that in our last item today around municipal recovery and facilities, and we can talk about council meetings, public hearings, all that kind of stuff. But thank you for the question. Anyone else? Councillor McMaster, and then Councillor Law.
Aaron, when did you say we expect to hear from the Liquor Licensing Board about licenses?
I believe it's going to be a report that goes to council at the next meeting, June 9th. The Manager of Protective Services is currently working on that and may already be in the folder. And it's going to, I believe, refer to the opt-in, opt-out clause for notification. So the province is providing some guidance about whether a municipality wants to opt in or opt out of notification for liquor licensing, which would remove a fair amount of time for someone who's applying for a liquor license amendment. So I think Chief Baker will have that in front of council on the 9th.
As a follow-up, have you got any feeling how long it will take the liquor board to approve these licenses?
From what I understand, and I haven't been fully involved with it, it'd be, I think, weeks, probably, maybe like 1 or 2 weeks, if that. Apparently the turnaround is virtual. I don't believe there's going to be any on-site inspection. So it seems like the province is really pushing this as an option for restaurants. So I think we're talking weeks at the most, but I think Chief Baker should have more information on that next week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Law.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I'd just like to say I'm in support of this. I do have one question, and it has to do with the possibility of increased noise and disturbances that may be associated with increased use of outside or upper deck patios. Is there, and I did see that you did address that I just wondered if you had a contingency plan if those issues did arise.
I think that we'd be relying on our current bylaws for noise and disturbances, and basically work with any complainant as it came forward. I would expect that a business that wants to continue operating in a time where there's going to be so little business would probably be looking to operate in a way that doesn't upset their neighbors. But other than using the current bylaws, I don't have any other plan Bs in my back pocket.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Would somebody like to make the motion? Lisa, motion?
I will move that the District of Tofino Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1285/2020, attached as Appendix 1 to the report titled Zoning Bylaw Amendment District of Tofino COVID-19 Recovery, dated June 1st, 2020, be introduced and read a first and second time, and that the public hearing for District of Tofino Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1285/2020 be waived, and that staff be directed to publish notices advising the public of the waiver of the public hearing for District of Tofino Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1285/2020.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Are there any final comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. That's everybody, and motion carried. All right. So moving on to, I think, Elise, are you speaking to this? The report from...
Yeah, I'm just going to try and share my screen as well.
Great, thank you. So this is with respect to a request to spend up to $20,000 from the unrestricted reserve funds for expenses related to recovery efforts from the that are identified in our recovery action plan. Thanks, Elise, for this. It's on this. It's on the presenter settings. It doesn't matter, but just so you know. You go down to display settings, maybe, or up to display settings, and go into present. Oh,
I'm not sure. I think it's because I am running this meeting. It is doing something odd for me.
You know what? It doesn't matter. It's okay. We can see it.
Okay. Well, thank you for your patience. The recommendation of this report is that staff be authorized to expend up to $20,000 from unrestricted reserve funds for expenditures to support efforts that are identified in the District of Tofino COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan. And the background to this report is a recent change. So back in March, I think we're all aware that there was, the public health emergency was declared under the Public Health Act on March 17th, and the COVID-19 pandemic was also considered an emergency within the meaning of both the Public Health Act and the Emergency Program Act. As a result of that, EMBC issued task numbers to both local and First Nations governments for eligible emergency response costs within the meaning of the Disaster Financial Assistance Regulation. Task numbers are the primary tracking mechanism that EMBC uses to track response expenditures for future reimbursement. So the recent change to that came last Friday on May 22nd, when Emergency Management BC informed local emergency coordinators that emergency expenses related to recovery actions wouldn't be eligible for DFA, Disaster Financial Relief Assistance, and only those expenditures that are related to response costs would be considered for further reimbursement by the province. So we have gone to the province to request further clarity about this direction. We haven't had written direction yet. It's been communicated to us just orally through the coordination calls that we sit on. And we are continuing to make the case for DFA for certain expenditures in the EOC. However, in the case that funding requests through EMBC are not successful, we're recommending that Council authorize up to $20,000 be released from reserves in support of the COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan. And just as a reminder, the COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan was initiated by the District of Tofino EOC and finalized in collaboration with both of the task forces, so the Economic Recovery and the Community Health Task Force. And the plan provides goals and strategies as well as a number of actions that were identified to enhance the recovery of the community in several ways. And these, I've just outlined the high level goals here on the screen. So promoting physical and mental health and financial well-being of residents, facilitating business continuity and resiliency within the District of Tofino, and learning from the organizational response to the pandemic in order to build back better. So what this would look like in terms of expenditures, we've heard a few different ideas come out of the task forces already. And just for an example, that could be consistent public facing signage throughout the District of Tofino. So
really sorry, but I can't see what you're seeing.
You can't see my screen anymore?
Well, no, we can see your screen, but it's kind of frozen on the title screen.
Oh.
So if you've been flipping through slides, we have not. I'm very sorry.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
Why don't you try unsharing your screen?
Yeah, thank you for telling me. Just a second.
I realized it now. If you unshare your screen and then maybe share it again, and if you try to go, I'm not too sure on the Microsoft machine, but
does this work?
That's better.
Are you seeing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I won't run through all of these slides again because that seems a bit unnecessary. But I'll stop on the slide where I was. So just to sort of recap, a few ideas have come forward through the task forces that would require funding, and we would normally be going to EMBC to assist us in that funding. And a few of those projects include public-facing signage to assist visitors and customers have a recognizable signage system within the stores for physical distancing. And this is sort of similar to what we do with wayfinding signage in our community to help people find their way around. But we'd like to be able to provide that sort of physical distancing recognizable signage to businesses who need that support. And we've had them designed with the colors of the wayfinding sign program in mind, and we'd like to fund that with a few $1,000s and a contribution from the chamber. We've also heard that there's a lack of capacity to really coordinate messaging right now. So everyone, including the District of Tofino, I think is running with fewer staff than normal, and the importance of a coordinated message to visitors as they return to our community is just of vital importance that we've heard from both task forces, both the Community Health Task Force and the Economic Recovery Task Force have identified that having someone to help coordinate that communication would be a real benefit. The financial impacts of this request are $20,000 to come from the Special Projects Reserve for Economic Development, and currently that fund sits at around $42,000, and these are unrestricted reserves set aside to promote local economic development initiatives, and they are subject to the approval of Council. And that is the end of my presentation. I'm sorry you didn't get to see all of it.
Well, you had to flip through it really quickly, and that was okay. Thank you so much. And thank you for this. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Anderson, and then Councillor Steer.
I'm in support of this, and I have to commend staff and the task forces for pulling the recovery, these plans together so quickly, and all the work that must have taken. So thanks for all that. My question is, I'm wondering if Tofino Tourism is able to contribute to the communication goals that are set out in the plans, if they have any way of participating in funding.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. That's a great question. And I think that from my perspective, Tourism Tofino is contributing everything they possibly can right now, but they have also lost a significant portion of funding this year. They have laid off a number of staff, and a number of other staff that are still there working on a part-time basis. So like everybody else, they're trying to operate with fewer resources. So I think that we can certainly rely on Tourism Tofino to help kind of on an in-kind basis, but I'm not sure that they would be in a position to provide cash support for physical things like decals and signs and things like that. But if anybody else has a perspective, then please, by all means, contribute.
And just one other thing, I don't recall if that council's adopted the plan, or whether council needs to.
Good question.
So my other question was that, and that's all I have.
Thanks. Elise?
That is a good question, and no, council hasn't adopted this plan. There was a plan that came before council very early on in the process that you might recall, that also we didn't seek council approval of. So these are sort of operational plans that were developed by the emergency program through the EOC, essentially. So they are approved by the director of the EOC, and it's a bit of a different process than a normal policy or plan. So the approval process does go through the director, and then we share that with our policy group, being council here today.
Thanks, Elise. And I think also too, I mean, the plan is definitely part of today's council agenda package, and anyone can view it at any time. But because it is constantly being updated, I think it's one of those things that would be more challenging to bring it back to council each time. I mean, part of the response and recovery process is being able to do this quite quickly. And so having that separate house to do it under, like through the EOC, has been really helpful. That is not to say that council's opinion on recovery planning and actions are not important. And if at any time there is feedback around what the task forces are doing or what staff is doing to support the action plan, then your comments by all means are always welcome. Are there any other questions? Councillor Steer, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Elise. Appreciate this. You've actually answered my question, but I do have a comment, because I'm really disappointed in the province on this one. You know, EMBC is only funding the response actions and not recovery. You know, the province has provided a COVID-19 response and recovery framework. The PHO has recognized that recovery, you know, is an integral action. It has to be fluid and reactive to the evolving situation while following the provincial framework. Recovery has been identified by the BC Emergency Management System as a critical function of the EOC, and yet we're not getting the support from the province on this, and so I just have to express that disappointment. But I was curious if if you've been in contact with other municipalities that may be able, as a united front, bring these concerns forward to the province and maybe seek a united sort of voice on this one. Thank you.
Yes, I think on our coordination calls, so our emergency program coordinator, Keith Orchiston, is doing a fantastic job of representing our interests, and other emergency program coordinators are identifying the exact same need in other communities, and this is being brought up through those calls and through many other coordination calls that are happening with mayors and CAOs, and yeah, it is definitely a topic of conversation at many tables.
Thanks for that. I really do wonder if, I mean, I agree with you, Councillor Steer. It is disappointing. And though on one hand, I can understand that with 180 odd local governments going through this, it's a pretty big ticket item for the province to consider funding. One of the reasons why I think maybe we feel it even more keenly in Tofino is because of our strong reliance on the tourism sector, and the fact that the tourism sector is, I think, one of the hardest hit, if not the hardest hit sectors across Canada. So I will check in with my resort mayor colleagues as well around that, because I think this is one of those places where sticking your head up and really saying, like, as a tourism dependent rural community, these are, you know, this is with very few supports. I mean, tourism is a sector that gets very few subsidies or supports like other industries that drive BC's economy. And I think once again, this is a way to push for more from the province. So thanks for saying what you think. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions about this recommendation? Okay, then turn your minds to the motion there.
I'll move that staff be authorized to expend up to $20,000 from unrestricted reserve funds for expenditures to support recovery efforts identified in the District of Tofino COVID-19 Recovery Action Plan.
Second.
Thank you. So that's moved and seconded. Any final comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay, and our final item today is an update on municipal recovery and facilities. And I think that our CAO, Bob, is going to lead us through this. Thank you.
And Elise is going to share the screen. Yeah. So are you able to advance? Okay, there we go. Great. So thank you very much for the opportunity to give council an update on where things are with respect to municipal operations. And of course, we all know that the province remains under a state of emergency, has been so for about 10 weeks now. And early on in a few days before the state of emergency was declared, we closed a lot of the municipal operation to the public in our effort to assist with flattening the curve. So there were a number of things that were done actually. Some services were suspended. Some were offered through alternate means. So visits to Municipal Hall that might have been in person, we encourage people to use the phone. More drop off for payment than coming in and paying at the front counter, that sort of thing. During that time, we've looked at our operations and developed policies for reopening, or for reopening in a different way, I guess. So implemented physical distancing measures, administrative measures of other kinds were introduced as well, and starting to look at where we can put physical barriers to assist with reopening in a safe way. Next slide. So reopening in a cautious way is going to be kind of the theme of this presentation. We did keep some things running at full tilt. The critical, we identified very early on, critical infrastructure, critical services that had to be kept open. So our water system will remain fully functional throughout the pandemic. We had plans in place and still have those plans in place of what we would do in the event of an outbreak that has involved cross-training, simplifying some of our practices, as well as entering into, and we will formalize this with council before too long, but entering into training arrangements with Parks Canada as well as with the District of Ucluelet for what we would do in the event that one of those three agencies loses operational staff. Sewage collection has remained fully operational. Sanitation, we've I'll talk about washrooms in a moment, but all of our garbage bins have remained in service. We closed the recycling bins because of the handling that has to happen with the recycling after it's collected, and not necessarily everything that's in a recycling bin is recycling, to be polite. And then fire and rescue has remained, of course, fully operational throughout the duration of the state of emergency. Next slide. While fire has remained fully operational, the fire hall offices are closed to the public and will remain so. The community hall was closed on March 17th also, and our plan is to keep that closed throughout the summer, except for internal bookings. Through the summer months, where we will sometimes have weddings and so on in there, and that business has all but disappeared at this point. Recreational programs were halted in mid-March as well, and we've begun the introduction of some youth and seniors programs over the last few weeks via remote delivery. Not looking at I'm not looking at any plans for in-person delivery. in the next short while, but it's something that is being reviewed on a continuous basis, looking at what the community is looking for, as well as examples of things that are working in other places. The Weagle Wagon, our recreation van, was taken out of service that famous third week in March. No plans to return that to service due to the difficulty getting people to physical distance within a small vehicle. Summer camps, we're planning that they would take place in a modified format. The district has hired a summer student to assist with running those programs, and the planning for those is underway. They run the months of, typically run July and August, and that's the plan. Don't know, we don't have detail at this point on what those camps are going to look like, but they will certainly be different than they were in previous years. Parks, trails, and beaches, they have remained open, and that's a real, has been a real benefit to the West Coast. I know a lot of the beaches on the East Coast, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, certainly Nova Scotia closed their beaches for an extended period of time. But we were fortunate on this coast that beaches remained open. Skate park, basketball, and racket sport courts were closed the third week in March and reopened on May 8th with social distancing signage in place. And for the most part, it seems to us like people are complying with the social distancing. People are starting to get it. There are the occasional outliers, but for the most part, that's been a welcome reopen. Playgrounds were also closed on March 24th, and they reopened just last week with signage for social distancing, reminding people to wash their hands, and hand sanitizer dispensers in place as well. The Children's Center, the daycare, it closed on or about March 20th. Staff remained employed with us for a short while after and did some cleaning and organizing, and then had a short layoff period. Staff began returning to the center this morning and have again started cleaning and reorganizing and trying to plan for operating childcare in a very different environment than was being operated a few weeks ago. So they are planning and will be welcoming children beginning on June 8th. One change that we're working through now is under the old operation, the cleaning was done by, so staff do cleaning through, daycare staff would do cleaning throughout the day, and then a cleaning contractor would come in the evening. We are working to have our own staff do the cleaning to ensure cleanliness and good response when certain kinds of cleaning need to be done or practices need to be changed. Next, please. Public washrooms were closed on March 17th also. We did a partial reopening and late March or early April. We opened the South Chesterman washroom as well as a washroom at Village Green. We this week, starting late last week, began to reopen the remainder of our public washrooms, and that will happen on a staged basis up until next Monday. The last of them will be cleaned and reopened next Monday. So there's a plan that has been developed for that. We are going to be monitoring for cleanliness. We're going to start, given that there are still few people in town, we will start with our previous practice of once or twice a day cleaning, but we'll monitor for cleanliness and will, as resources allow, adjust by cleaning them more frequently, or maybe closing some components if we think that's appropriate, if we cannot keep up with cleaning. The Municipal Hall, we did kind of a graduated closure over March 16th. We began by reducing the number of hours that the main office was closed, and by the end of that week, we had the office fully closed. Some of our staff have been working remotely, and it's been kind of a mixed bag. Staff will maybe come in for a day a week, but work remotely to protect their own health, as well as help us find better opportunities for those of us that are here to ensure physical distancing. We are planning underway. Our planning is now underway to reopen. The planning for opening the municipal hall has taken a backseat to some other things, in particular the effort that was required to get the children's center open. And we do have some spatial challenges here with some small spaces that we're trying to work through, looking at WorkSafe guidelines. And we do know that some additional barriers will be required, and in particular, the barrier, we currently have fairly low glass in the front office, and that will need to be raised to give us, provide separation from public coming in and staff working. And next slide. So council meetings, this was raised a short while ago in discussion. So the council meeting of March 24th was canceled, and on March 26th, the ministerial order enabled council to meet electronically like we're doing right now. And council can have a public meeting without the public present is one of the provisions. We've been quite fortunate that as we've met electronically, we've been able to keep these meetings open so that the public can participate by watching council meetings as they could when the meetings were in person. The ministerial order was updated a few weeks ago, and it now includes, or has been expanded to include, public hearings. So a public hearing can also be held electronically now. To maybe respond a little bit to a question that was asked earlier, yes, we can offer public hearings, as is noted here. We're looking to see some leading practices emerge from other municipalities rather than us kind of beta testing this. There are some concerns that we have with respect to access to public hearings electronically, and making sure that we are still complying with legislation. So as we're moving forward, we're watching to see what the practices are that are happening elsewhere, what's working, what's not working. For a lot of the time, in the last 10 weeks, council chambers has been used as an emergency operations center, or as our emergency operations center. And that made it just not available for council meetings. The emergency operations center was demobilized actually for a second time today. And so council chambers, the physical space is available for meetings. So we're going to take a look at what the physical space can look like, and if we can host or have all of council present for those meetings, or otherwise. We're looking, so we're looking at those options for in-person meetings. One of the challenges that we have is the setup that we have for cameras and microphones does not adapt very well to Zoom. So we've had our own staff look at it. We've brought in a local contractor to have a look at our setup. And it seems that the easiest thing to do would be to just get another webcam and a microphone. But for reasons that should be apparent, webcams and microphones are very hard to find right now. So we have had somebody checking websites every single day looking for those. And they only seem to be available from resellers who are charging double what normal retail is. But that may be something that we have to do sooner rather than later. I'm going to check with a few other sources in the next while, but we know the council is, or some members of council certainly are anxious to get back to meeting in the same room with the rest of council and with staff. And personally, I would prefer that format as well. So I don't want to promise a date, but it's something that we're working on, and it's a place that we want to get to before too long. I think that from my perspective, it's, again, we host some or all of council in one location. I think that access for the public, given the spatial restrictions that we have, will likely continue to be electronic. So moving forward, next slide, please. Thanks. We're planning recreation options right now. As I mentioned, we're planning some recreation camps for the summer that will be different. We're working on the reopening of Municipal Hall and working on ways to have in-person council meetings. At the same time as we're doing all of that, we know that we should also be developing closure plans for operations once again, so that if we do have an outbreak or if we do have orders from the medical health officer, that we'll be able to close things down in an orderly way. And we certainly learned from closing them down 10 weeks ago, I guess it is now. So that's all I have. Are there, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, Councillor Anderson?
I've had some businesses downtown ask me if we can have on-street hand sanitizing stations, and I don't think you have an answer right now, and I think you've identified it already at the staff level, but I just wanted to pass that on, that's there's some interest in hand sanitization. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McMaster, and then Councillor Law.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Parks Hill Council is returning to in-person meetings on June the 1st, I believe. Have we talked to them to see what systems they're using and protocol?
I have not talked with them, no.
I suppose I'm going to ask you, is that worth talking to them?
Oh yeah, certainly. You know, like we have a plan for how to open, and you know, happy to see what other folks are doing. We have a plan for how to open. We haven't had the room available, and the equipment that we need has not been available. So if there's some other way that they're you know, operating without a webcam, which is what's, you know, the kind of the key piece of equipment that we need. I'd love to see that. That seems to be what's holding us back, and I have to decide if I'm going to pay more than what it's worth, really, if I want this to happen sooner rather than later. But yeah, happy to see what Parksville is doing for sure.
Yeah, because I don't know exactly, but having been in council chambers, I don't think their equipment is that more sophisticated than ours. But I might be talking through my hat on that one.
Guess we'll find out if they have a GoPro too. Thank you, Councillor McMaster. Councillor Law?
I don't have a question. I just want to say thanks, Bob. I think you've done an excellent job, and the staff has done an excellent job. And I think we're in a good position, in large part, to excellent rollout of your plan and policies. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Steer?
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. The one thing that I missed is, what is our bylaw capacity at this point? I know that we had Kira was leaving. I'm just curious as to where we're at with that. I just noticed with a few more people out on the beaches and stuff, there have been some issues that have been coming up, and I was just curious where we're at.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So in reimagining our budget, 2/3 of the way through the budget process, one of the things that we decided to not do this year was having our CMP reservists come to town, and looking at, you know, at that point we were unsure if we would have any visitors at all this summer. You know, back in March, early April. Projections are now around 60% occupancy, maybe a little bit better. So we're still reasonably comfortable with that decision. We have also been talking with RCMP about, you know, what's their availability for their regular members to assist on the beach from time to time, and those discussions are ongoing. The third part to that is we have kept all of our, you know, we've kept our bylaw numbers mostly in place. We are short one person who has, you know, taken an opportunity at another municipality, and we're in the process of filling that position. But we will likely be short this summer just because of the time that it takes to go through a process and hire somebody and get them to give notice wherever, wherever they're working and then relocate here. So we may be a little bit short through the summer.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you very much for the update. I really appreciate it. And I think that then brings us to the end of our meeting today. So in the abrupt way that Zoom creates, may we please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move adjourn.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Motion passed. Okay, so goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.